of Mike Ellis. I'm still in contact with him now. I was at a Phoenixville school board meet the candidate event last night. Met their candidate. I forget her first name. Forgive me. Her last name Shanley. She had a really great, address to the crowd that showed up. And anyway, I saw you had shared something with one of the people in our group here over in O&J Roberts, and it mentioned Lisa Longo. So what was that? Yes. What was that link you shared? What were you?
So what I actually shared was a blog post that I had published on my candidate page, friendsofstacywhomsley.com. I find my personal candidate page to be the best way to kind of get my message out and let voters know who I am, as a person, as a parent, as as an advocate for our community. I am very familiar with Ms. Longo's long track record of trying to be the voice of health policy and education policy. And I won't get into the credentials that she likes to use to substantiate that. But what I do know is that she is not a parent in my district. She does not have school-age children in my district, and she has no business telling me what my children should be doing or what is a big deal or not a big deal for my children. I am the expert in my children, and I alone, along with my husband. So, friendsofstacywhomsley.com, I put out a blog post yesterday to address, one, to share the fact that I actually went to Harrisburg last week. So last Friday, our state education committee, which is chaired by Senator Martin, held a hearing where they took testimony from our apparently now permanent head of education, Ortega, didn't realize he was confirmed, and our still interim head of health, Beam, who were asked a number of questions about what the guidance and policies are going to be for the fall and for the academic year from the state regarding schools in terms of masks, vaccinations, opening, health and safety plans, so on and so forth. So it came to my attention yesterday that Ms. Longo had put out a piece of propaganda on social media saying that schools have to submit a health and safety plan, that universal mask mandates are required, and that they will lose their funding if they do not comply. The only thing true in any of that is that they have to have a health and safety plan. The rest of it is completely false. And in my blog post, I provided links to the live stream recording from the hearing where we spent 2 hours basically having Ortega and Beam tell us repeatedly that there will be no universal mask mandate at the state level. There will be no vaccination mandate, that it is at the discretion of the school districts of Pennsylvania to implement health and safety plans with input from their local health departments. It is the recommendation of both those agencies that our school districts follow CDC recommendations, keyword, recommendations, and that they apply them as appropriate based upon their local community data. If you look at the numbers in Chester County, we're not having a spike. We're still in the moderate range. There is nothing happening locally with the Delta variant, with ICU beds. There is no data reported per chesco.org that necessitates a universal mask mandate. So people like Ms. Longo, while I truly believe in her heart she is well-intentioned and that she thinks she's doing a public service, she's doing the most dangerous thing, and that is she is creating fear and concern where it doesn't need to be. She is peddling her propaganda. I apologize, I have puppies.
Tell me about your puppies real quick. Tell me about your puppies.
I have 2 beautiful rescues. We got them in March. That's Duke. Hi, Duke. Duke, you get a treat and you have to be quiet. So Duke is a Labrador Retriever, we think. We're not sure. They're rescues. They're siblings. We took litter mates. His sister's name is Daisy, and we love. So
Daisy Duke.
Well, Daisy, Daisy's actually my family nickname, and I have all boys. So when we got dogs, my husband promised me we would have a girl dog, and that we could name her Daisy. What goes with Daisy? Well, we picked Duke, and it's Susan.
It's a great dog name. It's a great, strong name. And going back to the point of,
Miss Longo.
Ms. Longo, listen, she promotes herself as an activist and an advocate. And with what's
Yes.
going on in the school board situation, in school boards in general, right? They're
Yep.
not supposed to be political, and we don't need
Yes.
activists and advocates acting in that manner, right? So I think you
Well,
make a really good point there.
and also just to make a point of differentiation between my advocacy and her advocacy, because we're all advocates, right? We're all self-declared advocates. We've never had more advocates in the world than we have right now. The difference between Miss Longo and I is that I believe in liberty and rights, and I believe in personal choice. And I think parents and guardians deserve to be respected as being the experts in their own children. They have access to the same information that the school districts do in terms of local data. We also know our children's personal circumstances, and I happen to be the parent of 2 neurodiverse children, both of whom have sensory processing disorders. My youngest child has a medical disability. He is speech apraxic. He will have speech impairment his entire life. He was mute until he was 4. He spent 2 years going to school year round to get age appropriate in his speech. He's made incredible gains in his 9 short years. And he just had the most horrific school year of his life due to mask mandates. And he has had more regression in the last 6 months, more depression, anxiety, outbursts due to these unnecessary and overreaching COVID mitigations. I do not co-parent with the Westchester Area School District, and I do not feel that any family in our school district should be forced, blackmailed, bullied, or told that they are being selfish or that they don't deserve the right to make appropriate medical decisions for our children. They spent the spring promoting vaccine programs, which is wonderful in terms of, community health. Oh my goodness. Oh.
Listen, if they weren't rescues, we might have to do. No, I'm only joking.
No, I know. He never does this. It's like he knows that he doesn't have my attention. They are trying to do the right thing in a lot of ways, but where it crosses the line is where they are either intimidating, intimating, or trying to feel like there is some sort of reward for making a medical decision that they want you to make. And so they did it in the spring where they incentivized our students to say, hey, you want to stay in school? Get vaccinated. You want to go to prom? Go ahead and stay home for 2 weeks, right? So they're influencing our children and our decision making by providing the incentives they feel are best. That's not the school district's role. They're there to educate. They're there to teach reading, writing, math, history. They are not there to be a health agency or a health agency. Our district superintendent, Jim Scanlon, who is retiring as of this Friday, along with the president of our school board, Chris McCune, made multiple statements last year that we are not a health agency. We are not in the business of vaccination. We're not in the business of testing. So let me ask this question. Why? When a member of our community submitted a right to know request to the Chester County Health Department, did we come across the hard copy of a signed contract between Dr. Scanlon, Mr. McCune, and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to do 2 things and 2 things only: vaccinate our children and test our children? Now they will say that, that's with parental permission. Well, they say that. And then they cancel our public committee meetings for this past Monday, just yesterday, Monday, August 9th. There were supposed to be 2 public committee meetings, education and pupil services. And those committee meetings is where they would have shared with the public that they're considering a universal mask mandate. And what they did is they canceled those sessions. They postponed them to next week. And what I suspect, and I don't know this for sure yet, is that they held a private executive session, which according to the Sunshine Act, if held, was required to be publicly notified. So they don't have an obligation to let us attend the session, but they have an obligation to let us know that the session is happening. And they had time. They canceled the Monday sessions last Friday. So the same day I'm in Harrisburg attending the hearing with Senator Martin and Senator Mastriano, and I want to give a special shout out to our representative, Carolyn Comida. She didn't participate, not virtually and not in person. So thank you for the representation, Ms. Comida. Our district canceled our public sessions and then today notified our administrators that there is a universal mask mandate going into effect Monday, August 16th. You want to know what happened this week? You want to know why they waited? This week was transition camp. So the kids transitioning to middle school needed to go to transition camp. So they held off announcing this to the public until they were able to conduct transition camp. So all the parents could get a warm and fuzzy feeling that my kids are going to go to school, their rights are going to be respected, they're going to be able to decide whether or not they wear a mask. And then boom, they are going to slap us upside the head with medical rhetoric and taking away our rights as parents and say, as of next Monday, something magical has happened, not driven by data, not driven by science, and not driven by policy. Because again, Chester County Health Department is on the record saying there is no universal mask mandate in Chester County. They are now requiring K to 12 students, teachers, regardless of your vaccination status, mandatory mask mandate.
I'm afraid that's what's going to happen to us too. We just had kinder camp this week and it was so great to drop my son off without a mask and smiling and super excited for school. And I just know they're gonna pull out the mask. So I'm already making alternate,
I like to call it the bait and switch.
Yeah.
Now, why wait? If you were going to do this, tell us in June. Why'd you approve a health and safety plan in June? They did it for a variety of reasons. They're going to say, well, we needed to wait and see what happened. Okay, well, what happened?
Nothing, right?
Show me the data.
Happened.
Nothing happened. What happened is they saw enrollment in our public school system plummeting because we all saw the academic data from last year that remote learning was an epic disaster. It impacted children across all ages, all ethnicities, all demographics of financial income. It had the most impact on our minority students and those who are financially disadvantaged. And just because I want to be really clear about this, because I have some people who love to associate the two, being financially disadvantaged has nothing to do with your ethnicity. Westchester Area School District is a Title I district. We have a 25% minority student population, but we have 40% of our families who are financially disadvantaged. 40% of our families in a district supporting 12,000 school students do not make a living wage in Chester County. And you want to know who a part of that population is? Our teachers. Westchester Area School District has some of the highest paid administrators in the state of Pennsylvania and the county of Chester, and some of the lowest paid teachers in all of Chester County. You can take a seasoned tenured teacher with 20 years of experience. She can go up the road to a neighboring district and make $20,000 more tomorrow. Meanwhile, I live in a district raising its taxes 2-3% every other year, raising its annual budget $9 million on average every year for the last 8 years. 2 more years, we're on track to have raised our annual budget from $200 million to $300 million.
Wow.
Why?
So they've been doing this because they've been doing this forever, and we've allowed them. I was telling you before we hit record about my time writing as a political columnist in the Phoenix back in 2009, and that's where I first met Lisa Longo at the school board meetings. And I would go to these school board meetings and I would speak at the public participation because they were raising taxes. And I don't know if y'all remember what was going on in 2009. In 2010 and 2011, we were recovering from the then worst economic disaster. Myself.
You want to know what else was going on then?
Yeah.
H1N1, because I was pregnant with my first child, and H1N1 also a pandemic was happening.
Yeah. So let's throw that on top of it. That's a great segue, Stacey. So this has been going on forever. They're doing it again. They've done it forever. Back then, they were trying to they're just spending money like crazy. One of the things they want, it was just nuts, right? And they're trying to raise taxes. I'm like, people are struggling. So, and there's one other thing, right? You speak of the difficulties, and not just difficulties, the suffering of your children.
Yeah.
Some of your peers, and I say peers, parents, in Downingtown last week spoke very passionately and cited the 5 suicides in district in the high school population. I believe it's a high school population. So listen, they've been doing it a while, right? Now we have H1N1 didn't raise to the visibility, right? this is our kids, right? And this is very visible, right? This is very topical, not just amongst parents, but this is it. So why now? Why is now going to be different? Why are we going to be able to stop them now? I have some ideas, but you're the candidate. Like, what's
Better
going
or worse,
on?
I'm the candidate.
Yeah.
I just want to mention real quick, okay, advocate, parent, all of that. I'm not a politician. I
Right.
am not a politician. Being involved was absolutely on my list of things to do. Running for school board at some point in my life was on my list of things to do. It was not on my list of things to do this year. I have a full-time job. I have 2 special needs children. I had 2 parents who were in cancer treatment, one of which we lost in January after a 5-year battle. And I ended up announcing my candidacy less than 2 weeks after my mother passed. This was not the season of my life for this, but you don't always get to pick when you do this. And what I have is a community who is stifled, strangled, bullied, and silenced. And there's no better evidence of that than the very unfortunate viral moment. I mean, listen, Westchester Area School District deserves to be on the map. What we don't deserve to be on the national news for is our school board president silencing one of his constituents. And the point of that woman's statement, Miss Anita Agarian, was about transparency. People say, oh, she's the anti-CRT mom. She wasn't talking pro or against. She was saying, tell us what you were doing. And I mention this because it is at the heart of what the question that you're asking me. Why now? What's different now? The reality is what we are going through right now, it's not because of COVID. COVID exposed what our school districts were doing. COVID exposed the cracks in, frankly, our complacency as parents and as a community, right? We may or may not vote in an off-cycle election. We may or may not have even paid attention to who is running for school board. We probably filled in the circle of, oh, hey, my neighbor knows that person. They must be a decent human being. They'll do a good job for our children. We have been asleep at the wheel as parents, as guardians, and as a community. COVID woke us all up, and there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And these school districts across Pennsylvania and across the United States are desperate to make us all blind again. And you cannot do it. We cannot unsee what we have seen, and we cannot unhear what we have heard. And we will not be silenced any longer. So that's what's changed.
Yeah, especially when they're not truthful and forthcoming or transparent, right? Like,
yes.
I can pull up things all day long. And I've presented it to them and they always talk around it. Yeah, but we're not doing that. We're just attending those trainings,
I gave a public comment at our June board meeting because they're like, we're not teaching a class of critical race theory. Okay, yeah, you're right. There's nothing in the curriculum that says course on critical race theory. What we know for sure, and we know based upon documentation from the district, is that they are using educational training on our teachers and have been for 10 years that are based in the concepts of critical race theory. What I know as a parent is last summer, when school was a disaster and the district was desperate to help us bridge the gap from June to August, they offered summer academies free to every student in the district. And what better way to keep your kids engaged than just like a week-long course? Like, let's just take this week-long thing and just kind of keep that muscle memory, right? So I had my 3rd grader at the time, a rising 3rd grader, 8 years old. I enrolled him in a social studies class that was titled Social Justice. Now, this is at the height of, the protests, right? I have family who marched peacefully in Philadelphia for the events that were going on nationally at the time. So this seemed like a really, interesting, like great.
Really? Can I don't mean to stop you, Stacey, because this is really interesting to me. Coming from where you are right now, and about a year ago, you were willfully signing your child up for a class that said social justice. Anything else you could tell me? Social studies, but the topic was, but the topic was okay. Yeah. So help me understand, like your mind. Yeah, I want to understand that because you're in a much different place now. I see.
Description was because listen, I'm a middle of the road person. I'm open to both sides of every story. I know why my family members marched in Philadelphia. And, at the end of the day, I want my kids to have a whole picture of what's going on in the world. So this class was supposed to be based upon the concepts of social justice based upon biographical and historical and non-fiction text.
Okay.
My son is like 2-3 days into the class. He's like, I'm like, are you done your reading? He's like, no, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm like, okay, let's sit together. Let's read it together. And what we end up reading is a story that at the time I made my public comment, I said it was about a boy and two boys. I stand corrected. He corrected me. It was race cars. So there's a black race car and a white race car. And the black race car excels, wins the race, but that there are forces outside of the competitors that keep changing the rules to strip the black race car of their victory. And the conclusion of the story is that the white race car apologizes to the black race car. A lot of people would go, okay, well, what's the problem there? Okay, first of all, is that a historical or nonfiction text that my child just read?
No,
Right?
not at
So
all.
whether you agree with the social concepts or not, it's a bait and switch. So, Danielle was talking about, things changing, rugs getting pulled out from underneath of us. A year ago, it was, you're going to go back hybrid. No, you're going to go remote. This year, it was, you're going to go back mask optional. Now you're going to go back universal mask mandate, right? It's the bait and the switch. And the more you look for the bait and the switch, it is everywhere in the public school system.
Yeah.
So people have to go and hit the button, check the box, fill in the oval for you, or somebody like there's other Ada Nestor's running. Who else is running in your district that we need to point out, by the way? Anybody else?
So we are a unique district in that because of our size, a few years ago we implemented regions. So we are carved into 3 demographics. And it's problematic. And we probably should go back to an at-large type of district election, because then every voter would get to vote for every position on the board. As it stands, you vote for the position representing your geography. So there are 3 seats in 3 regions for a total of 9 school directors. I live in what is known as Region 3. It's a representation of East Bradford, Westtown, Thornbury, including Delaware County, and parts of Goshen. So I have constituents that sort of run along the bottom part of our district. Ada is running in Region 1, which is at the heart of our district and is pretty much based in the borough of Westchester. And then we have a Region 2, which kind of wraps around the top. So there's 1 position open in Region 2, 1 position open in Region 1, and there's 2 seats open in Region 3, which is where I am currently running. So we had 5 primary candidates, 4 of which have advanced now to the general election in November. At this point in time, the only candidates that I will specifically mention are myself and Nada. And the reason for that is that the rest are either opponents of ours who we just are fundamentally at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of parent rights. They don't believe parents have the autonomy to make medical decisions for their children, or their current sitting board members. I felt very differently about some of the current sitting board members 2 weeks ago before Mr. McCune's viral moment. Unfortunately, the current board has stood with Mr. McCune and his actions, and therefore, I don't currently support any of the current board members. I think we need a complete turnover. I think we need to instill term limits. We have a board president who's already served twice, trying to go for a 3rd term. We have a sitting member of the board who's already serving 3 terms and could run for a 4th. I mean, that's 16 years. 16 years on a school board. I don't know a lot of corporations who don't change their leadership every couple of years to bring in fresh perspective, fresh voices. What we have right now is a sitting board who has a stranglehold on our community. And they will stop at nothing to stop us from speaking up and speaking out. And when we do, they try to silence us by saying, show us the proof. So I mentioned last month's board meeting because our school board president and our whole board will say, well, we haven't heard from anybody about critical race theory. Nobody has expressed any questions or concerns. And that is a statement that Mr. McCune made literally following the June meeting, where I publicly shared my child's experience. That book that he read, that was teaching the concepts of oppressor and oppressed. That is critical race theory. I'm not even here to debate whether that's right or wrong. I'm here to debate the fact that my superintendent in that very same meeting said, we're not teaching critical race theory. We're not teaching a class in critical race theory. And in practically the same breath said, we cannot teach history without critical race theory. And that is the answer that right? Yes, thank you. And that was the question Ms. Agarian had for the board. Answer the question once and for all. She said, are you teaching it to our teachers? Because that's a very mixed message. We're not teaching it, but we can't teach history without it. We also have a middle school principal in our district who was getting ready to present at a national education conference about how to teach about racism. And the tenets of his presentation are very much based on critical race theory. So why is one of our middle school principals making a presentation at a national education conference about how to teach critical race theory if we're not doing it?
Yeah, and like what studies would they show? Because usually when they speak, it's how they implemented it in their current environment.
Yet we just appointed a very handsomely paid director of diversity, equity, inclusion. And you know that I have a parent in my district who has had multiple communications with her asking, how are we using critical race theory? What are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators of what we have even accomplished these last 10 years using the training curriculum from the Pacific Education Group? What proof do you have that what you're doing is the right thing? Where are the measures? Where's the data?
And I always ask, how are they going to measure this? Because
Right.
ONJ, our school, right, is saying equity is to just provide extra math support and resources for kids that aren't achieving it. So which means that their IEPs or their 504s are failing them and we're not doing a good enough job. We have no data showing that that's occurring. And we also don't have anything in place to measure if we implement this, what it's going to do or how you're going to measure it, right? Like,
and in our case, Ms. Mata refuses to answer the question, keeps insisting on having a phone call with the parent who does not want
nothing in writing. That's why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and what's very interesting is if you do go and listen to Westchester's board meeting from June, you'll also hear Dr. Scanlon talk about why training teachers about race is so important. And really the point of what he says is that his teachers were biased. And that's why we have to train the teachers because by his estimation, and I'm paraphrasing, so I really do encourage everybody, go to YouTube, Westchester Area School District, they have a YouTube channel, check it out. You can hear him. It's the last 10 minutes of the meeting. You can hear him say this for himself, that minority students were underachieving, not because they don't have the skills, not because they don't have the potential, but because the teachers were not demanding the performance out of the students.
Now, is it the same teachers? Do they have a list of reoccurring year to year of that
He
data?
didn't indicate. So to me, I'm like, okay, well, you should have fixed that. Yes, absolutely. Your teachers should not be applying different standards to students for their gender, for their race, for their sexual identification. None of these things should matter.
Yeah.
Right? A student is a student.
Yeah. Listen, so my grandfather, he was a Korean War vet. He got his degree after working several years in a factory building radios and stuff or whatever. And finally, kind of middle of life, became a teacher. But to do so, he had in the competitive market, I guess, I call it the 70s, I guess. He had to drive down to Delaware from Bucks County. It was a long hike.
Yes,
but
it is.
He did it for 20 years. A full-time teacher, and he taught at Penn State Abington for a good chunk of that in the evenings most times. Right. So teachers never had. Yeah. Right. Teachers never had it easy. But listen. So he was born in the 30s. I told you when he served. Told you when he was teaching. His population was, if not 100%, primarily African American. And my grandfather carried along some of the sentiments of his day. Kindest, gentlest man I ever knew. Never hurt a fly. Never saw him hurt anybody. Never saw him speak ill of anybody. But he definitely was a man of his time. He failed a student. And he probably failed many students. Who knows? But at his funeral, posted on the, all the pictures, was a letter. It was from a student. It was an email. Late 90s. Hey, Mr. K, yada, 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 ran into so-and-so. I got to tell you, here I am now. Boy, was I pissed off when you failed me. But I got to tell you, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Reevaluate it, made some changes, and I have you to thank for where I'm at today. It's
Sounds
a real
like a
shame.
really
It's a real shame.
great
Yeah,
example of equality. You got
it's a real
equalness of
shame.
opportunity.
It's a real shame that teachers aren't empowered to do that today. You talked about, people across Pennsylvania wanting to get together. How are you doing that, right? Danielle and I are involved in We the Parents here in OJR. We're trying to spread that. You guys want to do a podcast? Let's brainstorm a little bit.
Oh, yes, please. Because you know what? I keep having this repeat conversation with people, and that is, I didn't know.
Mhm.
I thought, how can they be doing this? How could I have missed this? They seem like good people. And I'm not saying they're evil or ill-intentioned really, but they're definitely misled at this point. And part of what's going on in our district right now with the races is that we have anonymous groups of hate who are attempting privately and publicly to try to blackmail, coerce, harass, bully, whatever you want to call it, myself and Ada into dropping out of the race.
Do they wear
And
tie-dye?
you know what? They
Just
are
asking.
an interesting group. They're an interesting group. And what I will say about it is, you don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to like you, and I don't have to agree with you. But I will respect the fact that you have a right to your opinion. What I will not yield to is election interference. And what these groups are doing is election interference. Myself and 4 other people put ourselves out for public scrutiny to be judged in a fair and democratic process on May 18th. And our community exercised their right to vote. And that is why I'm on the ballot for November. And that is why Ada is on the ballot for November. And we will not yield. So I really hope they hear this, because I want to make it very clear. We will not yield to blackmail, coercion, and bullying, especially at the expense of democracy. Our voters put us on the ballot, and we will be on that ballot come November. And then the voters will speak their mind when they go to that ballot. And that is a fair and democratic process. And anything that happens between here and there is election interference.
And I'm really sorry too that you have to go through that. I've seen some of the slanderous comments made towards you and Ada, and it's not fair, right? Because you're just a parent helping other parents and protecting students and
protecting choice.
Yeah.
Protecting choice. I mean, you have to admire the irony of 2021, where right now the only organization holding strong for autonomy of bodily choice is the Archdiocese. There's an irony in that the only educational institution standing up to say my body, my choice is the Catholic Church. I mean, like 2021 has been extra everything. I mean, it's just this whole idea that like they think they have the right to take away the voice of the people who showed up on May 18th. Right?
Yeah.
That's a special kind of audacity and a special kind of arrogance. And here's the thing. Again, I'm not a politician. I had no desire for my name to be in lights, Yes, I got on this journey because I was participating in a community chat group that was supposed to be about helping us navigate these difficult times. And unfortunately, the moderators only wanted to hear from one side of the song sheet. So myself and others who felt very passionately that we deserved choice, that we deserved a choice to send our children in person because Westchester has a cyber academy. The state of Pennsylvania has a lot of cyber institutions. Any family uncomfortable with in-person education had choices. I had none. And so I did found a Facebook group, a private Facebook group that then was infiltrated by the very people who asked us to not have that conversation. And the public group said, followed us to our private group, said, get out of here, have that conversation someplace else. So we did. We went someplace else. They proceeded to follow us. They proceeded to attack. They proceeded to gaslight. And they proceed to do it today because they are the voices behind this anonymous hate group. And what I find so fascinating about this is that I'm not trying to force my opinion or my choice on anybody else. What I'm trying to say is you deserve your choice as much as I deserve mine.
Yeah, and everyone deserves a voice. And when they don't agree with you, that's when you get attacked and you get canceled and your voice gets silenced. I mean, you
get doxxed by your school district because our school district sent their communications director into our private Facebook groups using her personal account, posing as a Pennsbury parent. And she sat and she took screenshots and she emailed them to our administrators.
Wow.
Danielle and I have a way where we can get people into a platform where they have to authenticate by their phone number so they can have a handle that's but seriously, but they can only have one and the handle's backed and you can see right who it actually is. So we're really into this community building. I mean, you talked about this. This has all come from communities. Emily Shanley in Phoenixville. She is not a politician. She is introverted, but she is passionate about protecting the students, about standing up when she can.
I'm an introvert too, by the way. I know you don't believe it, but I am actually an introvert.
An extrovert by choice, right?
So do you want to wrap up with anything in specific? I thought it was a great conversation. We're going to speak with Kathy D. Marino from O&J Roberts in just a few minutes. So
awesome.
Anything you want to say to just wrap up, Stacey?
Sure. What I have to say is for every parent out there who feels invisible, who feels powerless, who just can't imagine how to face the next mandate, the next decision, you need to speak up. You need to contact your districts. You need to attend the meetings and stop waiting for the general meetings. Go to the committee meetings. Committee is where decisions are made. General sessions are where they're read out loud. By the time you get to the general session, you're not influencing anything. Find like-minded parents and don't just stick to your own geographic boundaries. We work with parents in Wisconsin. We've worked with parents in all kinds of places in the United States. You are not alone. Find your people, find your voice, make your voice heard. We will triumph and we will accomplish what we need to for our children, but we all have to stand strong because when we stand in the light, and this is the other thing Ada and I are very passionate about, when you stand in the light for public scrutiny, you are standing for truth. So the people who are standing in the shadows, unafraid to identify them or afraid to identify themselves, willing to hide behind mysterious shadow groups, they're not standing in the light. We need the parents to all stand together and we need to stand in the light.
And hopefully we can end on this. I think that's a great point because you're creating the new lunch table, right? You decided, hey, you know what? I don't want to be at the lunch table with everybody else. You're weird, right? But hopefully you're going to want to join us because we're going to go stand over here in the light and we're going to go live in the light. We're going to go be in the light. We're going to go reflect the light, and we're going to be consumed by the light. And you'll see people be attracted to that light. You'll see our table grow and, you'll be one of the people that come over eventually. There's a lot of people to help. I think, see what we've seen and can't unsee, to your point earlier.
I will be forever grateful for the village of people that this experience has brought into my life. I have made friendships that I will have long after this season passes. I found my people. This was not the journey I expected, but it's the journey that I got, and I wouldn't trade it for anything right now. I have made incredible connections, incredible friendships, and I see this as a clarifying moment for all of us, regardless of where we live. It's time to make the most of it. That's it. That's all I got.
Beautiful.
Akira.